Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Our panel, Soraya, Selvi, Kamani, Kaira, and Fazana is on a job today and she's hoping to join us from the wilderness. So we will leave space for her. Can I ask everybody, everyone else who's watching and listening in to please mute yourselves and also stop your video if you don't mind. So today's subject, very important guys, it's about voting wisely. Vote wisely, discussion on issues that impact our lives and our future, and the future generations, of course. I was at my physio today and she said to me, I'm not going to vote this time because voting means, it doesn't bring the results that I want to see. And I had to convince her that probably voting is the only free choice we have. If you really look around you, what other free choice do you have? There are rules and regulations for everything. Maybe some of us follow it, some of us don't. But, when it comes to a vote, we have that freedom of choosing who we want to vote for. Now, do we use it wisely or do we just squander this vote we have? Then she said, what if I spoil my vote? I said, well, that's just as bad, right? So citizens have rights and responsibilities when it comes to voting. So for a longer discussion, we will start with Selvi. She's, as you know, got lots of wisdom up her sleeve. Selvi is the CEO of Purnam Foundation. She fights to give, wages to women, especially after the war. And Selvi's been a stalwart, very, very historically engaged, and she educates all of us. So today she's going to talk about the history of why they set up parties for minorities in Sri Lanka, and what that has done to the minorities and everybody else, and how and why we should vote. As you know, this is not a political discussion. But before we start with Selvi, Selvi, do you mind? I want to show a little video clip of one of the clergy. As you know, we are not political and we are not religiously one-sided. But I want to show this clip from this clergyman, and let's go from there. We'll discuss it after the fact. Kamani?
අපි හිතුවේ මේ ඉස්සල රජයේ විතරයි කියලා. ඉස්සල රජයේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි. ඒ රජයට නෙමෙයි දැන් ඔය ඉන්න රජයෙන් ඡන්දෙ ඉල්ලන අය. සමහර අය නමුත් සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙනවා ලොකු අයගේ. අපි ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා මේ පක්ෂ දෙකෙන් මේ යන වැඩපිළිවෙල අපිට මදි. මෙහෙම බෑ කරන්න වැඩ. කරුණා කරලා මේ පාස්කු බෝම්බ ප්‍රහාරයට සම්බන්ධ වෙච්ච සහයෝගය දුන් නම ගෑවිලා හරි තියෙන හැමෝම ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න. පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරයේ ඡන්ද වේදිකාවට ගන්න එක සුදුසු නෑ. ඒ වගේම මේ
So, sorry, I had to cut it off so abruptly. And please note, we don't align ourselves with any of the politicians. Unfortunately, in that video clip, as you see, there is a politician. But, it was the message that mattered here. How it was delivered was a different story. And so I think maybe we have some responsibilities as the voters. We have rights and responsibilities, but I think maybe our clergymen, maybe our leaders, moral leaders have also got an obligation to come out and speak for a better tomorrow for all of us. So on that note, Selvi, we get back to you. Sorry, I had to run that little clip in your time, but yes, please go ahead.
Can't hear you.
Your sound.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction, and also what you said about your your physiotherapist or this practitioner you had visited. That is so important. First of all, we must all vote. that vote is a precious implement that we have to make a difference. And this is something that our predecessors have fought so much to achieve, and we should not throw it away. So please, everybody, I know the COVID is going to discourage you from going out, but please make an effort. They are making it more easier to actually go and vote with the COVID on. Please vote. And secondly, vote strategically, right? She was saying, if I don't like, should I spoil the vote? No, you either have a very the confidence in one party, and then you vote in order to put that party in power, or you have to vote to prevent some other party coming to power. See, either this is voting strategically. If you don't like any parties, vote something that will prevent something that you don't like. Now, you have 3 Manape votes. Now, you know, somebody was talking to me today and he said, you know, this time all the contestants, there are so many nice people, young people who are contesting in all the different parties. We can go cherry pick and vote for those people who are good. We can't vote for them independently because we are voting actually a party into power. What we can do is use our 3 Manape vote to highlight and promote the good moral human beings that we want in parliament. Now, how should minorities vote? I would categorically say minorities do not vote for parties or candidates who claim to represent your interests on the basis of being part of a religious, language, or other groups. It's very important that you really understand this point. And for this, I would actually relate a little bit more and go back into history a little bit. Please do not vote for parties or candidates who claim to represent your interests on the basis of being part of a religious or language groups. Why? The problems in Sri Lanka that we face are all based on socio-economic issues. The root cause of the problems we are facing arise from economics, bad governance, and corruption. These problems are faced by all communities. If someone comes to you and say, he can solve your problems by virtue of his party, which will protect the rights of Tamil, Muslim, or Buddhist communities, he is either lying or has another secret agenda. If someone comes to me and say, I will represent your rights and privileges as a Tamil person in the parliament, I will not trust him. I will not give him his communalist party my vote, for the simple reason he cannot defend my rights and privileges by doing that, by going into parliament. It is humanly impossible for him to take care of the interests of the minority without caring for the interests of the people as a whole in Sri Lanka. Because any problem can be solved only by addressing the people in the country as a whole. For example, can poverty be redressed among a group of people without addressing the poverty in the country? Economists will agree that it cannot be that way because everything is connected. Minorities should select parties that are addressing the issues of the country as a whole, known as mainstream parties. They should enter mainstream politics and make a difference in the main dialogue that's happening in the parliament. When they are part of a communalist, religious, or regional party, they are alienated, marginalized even more. If we take the Tamil parties as a whole, as an example, only as an example, okay, it's not a criticism, and it actually applies to Muslim as well as Christian or any other group parties. It is any communalist party, the fate is the same. If we take the Tamil parties as a whole as an example, They started talking about rights and privileges of the Tamil people as far back as 1925, even before independence. Tamil nationalism grew very strong and later evolved into an armed struggle, which was even stronger. After almost 100 years of this communalist polemics, what is the situation of Tamil people today? The best and the most resourceful people have all migrated. Many, many more have been killed in the country. They have progressively lost the lands they were occupying in the east and south and west, northwest of Sri Lanka. Their businesses have been systematically destroyed in waves of riots. Finally, a treacherous war was waged on the Tamil community with many deaths and disappearances, of which the outcome is still being suffered, not just by the Tamil community, but the whole country. And moreover, the country was gripped in conflict and strife for more than 30 years. So what have the Tamil parties done over the 100 years? I cannot find a positive attribute that had accrued to the Tamil people or the people of the country in general. All these years, Tamil nationalistic policies that they have pursued. I don't need a Tamil party or a Tamil person to represent me in parliament, to protect my rights and privileges. I need someone who will represent the Sri Lankan people to protect the rights and privileges of Sri Lankans. Someone who will protect the environment and the resources of this country. I need someone who will protect the elephants and all the other animals in this country. I need someone who will give equality and representation for women in parliament. When all of these are protected, my rights and privileges will automatically be protected. This is my case. Thank you.
Selvi, I want to ask you something. You know, how did these minority parties come to be? I mean, how were they created? You know, just to ask you about the little history behind it, you know, how did this happen in as short a form as possible?
I think it was because of the rise of leftism, socialism in this country in 1935, when LSSP grouped together all the communities together. And under the LSSP, there was a huge swell of support from Tamil Muslim Burgher communities. And they really it came to a point in 1952 when they had an island-wide hartal in which the whole island, including the parliament, was paralyzed. And it was necessary for these people to see that these communities who are brought under this socialist banner to be separated, to be divided, without which they couldn't rule them. And the parties that were already existing in terms of communalist basis were called in, and they really did the job. They took the Sinhalese and the Buddhists into the Sinhala nationalist parties, and the Tamils were taken into the Tamil nationalist parties, and the entire socialist, leftist ideologies fell down by the wayside. And actually they have succeeded in that. They have divided the community, and they have divided the people from being able to be democratically asking for their rights and their privileges.
I think, you know, this thing about divide and conquer, they have learned very well from the colonizers, you know. Why is it that we couldn't learn the good points and just picked up the bad points? You know, obviously it has created mayhem in this country. And as you said, you know, having minority parties has done nothing for the minorities. And why is it that the people, those who we want to, you know, talk to right now, why do they not take it to their head that, you know, voting on, you know, race lines doesn't help them? And so they need to learn their rights and responsibilities in this, right, Soraya?
Yeah, quickly to add to what you said, Carol, minority parties have not helped minorities. That's the gospel truth. Look at the Muslim women. We have been begging for reform on Muslim marriage and divorce, where women are being marginalized, treated so inhumanly. Not one member of parliament of the Muslims ever supported these reforms, because everybody was building on their voter base. And today, the Muslim community, half of the Muslim community that comprise of Muslim women, we are disenfranchised in the sense that we are not participating in our democracy effectively. So our politicians who are supposed to have represent us have represented themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. That gives clarity, you know, both from a Muslim angle and from a Tamil angle. It brings clarity to this whole big question of how you vote and who you vote for. So on that, Kamini, as you all know, is a GBB specialist, the founder and CEO of Shanti Margam, and my good friend, Jungle Buddy Kamini. Kamini wants to talk about why youth vote counts and the need to have women's voices heard in parliament. I mean, not enough women go to parliament, right? And, you know, youth should not make the same mistake, Kamini, you know, in voting party lines just because their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents voted. And I think today's youth are much smarter in that sense. You know, they don't just follow, they think for themselves. So over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol. I wanted to start off actually by just stating a statistic that came out from the presidential elections last year. So it was said that the youth vote counts for 1.5 million ballots of the 16 million registered voters. And analysts have included them in the decisive undecided voter group, which is estimated to be 20% of the ballot. So this makes it so important and shows how and why it is so important that young people move forward to exercise their right to vote. You know, it's very easy to feel disenfranchised or disappointed or disillusioned by certain aspects that are coming out, especially in social media, in the news on a daily basis. I mean, it's difficult not to be impacted, but young people have to really understand that the future of our country and their rights and their ability to come forward and speak also lies very much in their own hands as well. And I think something that we're very used to in Sri Lanka, and also I guess in a lot of countries, is that it's as though we treat voting as something that is inherited from family to family. Whereas, as Selvi and Carol said at the start, the vote is such an important way of expressing your opinion. Before 1931, before we got universal franchise, it was only the wealthy and the educated men above 21 who could vote in Sri Lanka. So we have this right, and young people have the right, and they should really use it well. And it was also noted during the presidential elections last year that young voters, and this is what Roel Raymond said, she's an editor of the Raw magazine, said that young voters have gone from initially being apathetic and being critical of the establishment to now realizing they have to choose between the two main candidates. So it's a good thing, and young people are definitely the future of our country, and you see young people bringing in so much color and important raising topics in our country in such important ways, but also they need to be intelligent. They need to select candidates, not go with what their family historically voted for. And when they select candidates, they have to look at candidates, their quality, not only people who speak out, not only for issues that are interest to them, but also who have acted on them, either as members of parliament or in previous positions. An important source of information on former candidates or people who have been members of parliament is monthly.lk, which gives a snapshot of each parliamentarian who has appeared in parliament, how many times, how present they were, and which issues they canvassed. And also, I think it doesn't only stop there. I think youth have a very important role in speaking out on what they want and what they need. They have to really understand their importance in this in this country, because it's not only when you reach a particular age that you should be speaking out about issues that are important to you. I mean, I remember many years ago when, well, I wasn't a young person, but you may know of Milinda Rajapaksa, who is now a strong supporter of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. We used to work very closely on sexual reproductive rights. And I remember us during a particular election going to candidates, and we were only able to go and see Mangala Samaravira, where we were trying to push the sexual reproductive rights of youth. And like that, now there's such a greater birth for young people to come forward. And they should also, when they start selecting their vote, they should look at parties which, to understand what are they promoting for young people. The UNP manifesto, the SLPP, one Samagi Jana Balavega has a Samagi Youth Force, the Jatika Jana Balavega. All of these, they need to check the documentation, the manifestos, what are the promises and what is their history of either implementing or their members or candidates having implemented work that promotes youth voices. And to go on to women, we've spoken about this enough and more, but just to say it once more, it's very sad. 52% of our population are women, and less than 6% are represented in parliament. And it is a fact, unless women are present in parliament, women's issues will not be given prominence. Be it gender-based violence, be it women's economic empowerment, be it so many factors, women's voices in communities, everything. You need to have women's voices speaking out for women in parliament. And also women as constituents need to also really exercise their vote. I feel that women also take a back seat. I think women really need to understand the importance of that vote that they have. And they shouldn't wait for something, for them to have had some kind of negative experience due to their gender, due to their sexual orientation, due to any discrimination they have faced, only to come forward to want to voice their concerns. They should also use it through their vote. And also, just to point out, for us as women who have been activists in this work, for us it's also been very important to have women in parliament, because we reach out to the female parliamentarians, especially in the caucuses, to push very specific issues around women, even the Muslim Marriages and Divorce Act, the sexual reproductive health aspects. Like, it's through women that we've been pushing these issues a lot. And also, we've spoken a lot about this in the past on this show, about women bringing in the feminine principle into governing. It's become such a dirty place now, politics in Sri Lanka and in many countries, but getting back to Sri Lanka, we need the women to come in, to come forward, to be in parliament, to show what it's like, and to remind people of the nurturing, the compassionate, the listening, the empathetic aspects of women. Not that all women will definitely have those leadership qualities, but they have a higher percentage of showing it. And it's not that men don't either. But if we want to see a change in the style of politics, we also do need to have more women in parliament. And once again, I would encourage women to look at the manifestos, see what the manifestos are saying and what are the track records in terms of upholding women's rights. And it's also sad that, you know, we tend to have a very strong and higher scrutiny of women candidates than of men. I mean, we forget that some male parliamentarians actually broke furniture, they were abusive and all that in parliament not so long ago when they displayed their leadership. So please remember these things. So these are the key things I wanted to say. And once again, just to emphasize, we need to all really understand the value of the vote and come forward and vote in some way or the other. Do not stay back at home. And the young people, you know, speak to them, encourage them to be intelligent, to read up and to check facts, check histories, and be informed when they vote. Thank you.
So, you know, Kamali, do you know the percentage of youth in this country? I mean, when I say youth, I'm talking about under 50. Since I feel like we are a younger society in this country, but we seem to have a lot of leaders who are so much older, right? And things have changed, whether be it technology, be it whatever, to take this country to the next level. Don't you think we have more young people engaged?
Well, we generally say that youth are up to 15 to 24, and we say that they're around 30% of the country's population, generally. So yes, and I think, I mean, in other countries, you see a lot of young people really coming forward and really pushing and speaking out against issues, whereas in Sri Lanka, I mean, even in India, you see a lot of young people really being outspoken. And it's sad. I mean, there are lots of issues that I think are the backdrop to why youth and people in Sri Lanka are not so outspoken. But I think we need to make it change also, right? We also have to change
Yeah.
the culture.
Yeah, thanks, Kamini. Soraya, are we ready to go? You know, Soraya is an interfaith leader. She's a lawyer. She's a unifier. She works with women across the globe. A great asset to this team. She always has so many opinions that are studied opinions, you know, and I think they're very important to listen to. Soraya would like to talk about why we vote and marginalization of the minorities.
Thank you so much, Carol. You so beautifully introduce every one of us. And let me do justice somewhat to you. As our listeners are here, please know that Carol is a world famous activist. She's a social and environmental activist. She co-founded WIN, and she promotes gender equality through sports. Recently, she was recognized by the Olympic Committee for her contribution to sports and youth. And what I love most about of all the things you've done is you built 15 homes for women-led households. And I mean, that is phenomenal. Thank you, Carol. You know, Pluto once said in 347 BC, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. So I think somehow that is our story. And today, actually, I didn't even prepare any notes because I'm speaking from a deep space of sadness. Because 70 years after independence, I think we Sri Lanka has regressed. We have regressed in every possible aspect. And something that I hold near and dear is this aspect of unity of our communities. When I was growing up in Sri Lanka, I remember the Buddhist monk would come to our house and we might give him something to eat and he would bless me. And today, all what we hear is strong nationalistic voices of a small segment of Buddhist monks who are dividing and destroying this unity that we are aspiring to build once again. So why has this happened? I think it is because we have failed to have an honest admission of our shortcomings. We have been unable to move forward, I think, because of this phenomenon. I want to talk about three issues that are percolating in our country that a voter has to be very vigilant and mindful about. And that is the way the minorities are treating. And I'm not saying the minorities don't have to step up. We have to. But this is a difficult task with 70% of a majority population. Minorities need the support and the help and the blessings of the majority. What I see in the waves is hate speech and incitement against minorities going unabated, going unchecked. And there's no leadership in our country to unite our people. So when we vote, let us be very mindful about candidates who promote national unity. Because these are lessons we don't need to have PhDs in Carol, because these are simple lessons that begin in our homes. We can't divide and rule, and we will never be a great country. And also there is a tendency, a path and a growing movement for Buddhist supremacy in our country. And that should concern the minorities a deep lot. So when we vote, let's vote for candidates who promote national unity and equality. Because without our ability to coexist with one another, without our ability to get along with one another, what kind of a country are we going to build? then also I'm deeply concerned that when we vote, we have to be really mindful of the path our country is going now. We are militarizing our country. Our democratic institutions will gradually lose their power. And this is sad because we know what has happened, what can happen, and what will happen if we are to take that path. So my message is very simple. Vote for a candidate, a party that has a national policy on issues, not party policies. Because this has been our downfall. We have 4-year policy, then somebody else comes, they replace that, then they have new policies. This is not gonna work. And we see there is a tendency, as Kamini pointed out, young people are coming up and they are getting more engaged and involved. So we want to build that momentum, because democracy is not a spectator sport. We have to vote on issues that matter very deeply to us. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Soraya. You know, you were talking about divide and rule. When you divide a nation, it only supports the shenanigans of the leaders, because it doesn't support you and I. It doesn't support the people. It doesn't help us to grow if we are constantly warring with each other. If the majority, which is 70%, think that they are under threat from any minority, because if you take all the minorities together, they fall into 30%, right? So if we divide ourselves, guys, you know, I think these race issues are dredged up during election time. They are, you know, galvanized certain factions to go out there and stir the pot. But come on, we've got to be smarter, right? We are educated. And we look at, you know, as you just said, what Plato said, we are being governed sometimes by inferiors. We have total disrespect, some of the politicians in parliament, total disrespect. They grabbed the mace, they threw chilies, they threw chairs, they grabbed the Bible, they threw the, you know, whatever was there, sat in the speaker's chair. I mean, what kind of behavior is this? And what are we teaching our children, right? So guys, anybody who's watching us, please preach that when you go out and talk to people, talk about unification. That is absolutely paramount and key to prosperity for the people. Who is prospering right now? You know, we are out there, Soraya, we are raping and pillaging this country like never, ever before. As you said, I'm an environmentalist, I'm a conservationist, I work with environmentalist groups. You know, politicians like to throw stones at some of us who are out there working our butts off on a voluntary basis to try to secure a better tomorrow. So I always say, you know, our responsibility as voters and citizens of the country is to leave a better country than we found it. And how do we do that if we are apathetic and we don't care about what happens as long as it doesn't happen to me? I mean, that kind of attitude, you know, that it doesn't happen to me. So why do I care? You know, somebody got beat up on the road. It didn't happen to me. You know, somebody was attacked because of race. It didn't happen to me. When are we going to talk? When it happens to us? And, you know, as those famous words were quoted by the, you know, great philosophers, you know, when it comes to my turn, maybe there's nobody out there to speak for me, right? So environmental issues, you know, one of the key cries I'm making this time, when you vote, please vote for a politician who's going to secure the resources of this country. Water is extremely important. People are just bottling it and shipping out. This water belongs to all of the people, not some of the people, right? Sand, they're just digging out sand from sanctuaries. Right now, they're digging out sand from Somavati sanctuary. It's a sanctuary, people. You're not supposed to go out there and dig out sand. So who's behind this? They're trying to do prawn farming in Vidataltivu mangroves. These are the most pristine mangroves in Sri Lanka. Suddenly they have discovered Manna is an open area that they can go and rape and pillage. they have done illegal exploration for ilmenite in Mana. And this only came to light because someone of us saw this post in Australia saying, you know, we have secured the rights to mine in Sri Lanka for ilmenite and one other mineral. And what they were going to do is dig out that area of Mana and ship it out, right? Ship it out of this country. You know, you all know Mana is a low-lying island, right? Mana Island is a low-lying island. You can't just dig up earth and take it out of here. And what was the payback? 4%. They don't even specify who the 4% is going to. And so I think it was reported in the media that the geology department had said there was no approvals and it was illegal. So how is this illegal activity taking place? Right now, they're trying to build a 20 megawatt hydro dam in the Sitavaka, one of the most biodiversely pristine areas, over 95% biodiverse, right? There's this fish that is only endemic and in that area. It's unstable rock to build on, the riverbed. It's landslide prone. It's socially impacts over 1,000 families on either side of the river because they're going to take the water 1,000 meters down through a tunnel. And it and this tunnel goes through the two villages. So nobody in the village is going to have water. I mean, who cares about these people? And then the politicians come around and say, no, I'm not going to let it happen. You vote for me, right? And the people go, okay, hooray, hallelujah. And they go vote for the guy. And they find, well, guess what? He's going to come and do it anyway. Right? I was there at a meeting when the politician said, we are going to give 50 lakhs, that's 5 million per household. Well, some of the older people fell for that and they said, oh, we are going to get, 5 million and we are going to get land somewhere, etc. They've grown tea plants. There are home gardens in all of these houses. They've grown rubber, they've grown tea, they've grown their vegetables, they've grown. When are they going to, reestablish that kind of thing somewhere else? And quite often these people are moved and put into elephant areas. They don't know how to deal with elephants. People who have lived with elephants all their lives know how to get on with them, get along with them. But these people who come in newly had no clue. So the elephant-human conflict is exacerbated, right? They were trying to do some beach nourishment, which was an absolute loss, right? Filling sand in Calido Beach and Waltlavinia Beach, which got washed off. Look at the colossal waste of public funding. While they are raping and pillaging the land, they're cutting down every single tree they can get their hands on. Sorry that I'm going on so much, but I'm so passionate about what's going on because it breaks my heart that they are going to leave some concrete jungle or devastated wasteland for the future. And if you, the youth, don't get involved and go out and vote and do something, why are we, the older people, knocking ourselves, trying to tell you guys, this matters. This absolutely matters. And the latest one being the cabinet said, investigate how we can remove circular 05-2001, which in somebody's wisdom, I think it was 2001, of course, they said you cannot touch state lands. State lands have some kind of protection. So it's not a wildlife park, maybe it's not a sanctuary, but it's still a protected land. Now they want to take this, and they took the lands, these state lands were under the guidance of the GA. They want to take it, and so it was taken from them and, put under this circular. Now they want to remove the circular, give the lands back to the GAs. Guess what's going to happen, guys? Greedy hands are going to have a land grab. I'm just saying it. This is not one politician. This is not one party. This is all of them out there. So when we vote, we have to be mindful that we vote for people who care about leaving a better tomorrow for everybody. People who care that this country is going to, grow beautifully. As Soraya said previously, we are only digressing we're just heading backwards every day. I remember when Lee Kuan Yew said, you know, we want Singapore to be like Sri Lanka. Goodness gracious, where is Singapore today and where are we today? Just going backwards. The wealth is in the hands of a few people. The raping and pillaging, there's always dirty hands behind those, politicians behind those, right? So we have to make sure when we vote, we do our homework, find out whether people actually stand for these things or they are just espousing whatever, you know, they think that you want to hear. But once you vote and once you get somebody into parliament, ensure that you follow up and demand they keep to their manifesto. Some of these manifestos are written by somebody else. And nobody, the candidate doesn't even know what's in the manifesto.
Carol,
I think last time, sorry.
Sorry, no,
yeah,
I had a question for you. Why is this callous disregard? Is it because we have people who are unqualified or underqualified handling these ministries? Why? I mean, this is like a robbery, robbing our country.
So guys, the reason is, you know, we have one, yes, you're right, there are underqualified people, but those, and also the departments are not allowed to do their job because there's political interference. You put a subject minister who knows nothing about the subject to run a department. They don't even, you know, it's not rocket science. If you're a good business manager or if you're a good manager, you don't have to know the subject matter, but you allow the people beneath you who are working, the department heads, to do their job properly. And you take the responsibility of ensuring that they do their job. You don't go tell them how to do their job. You know, so there's a lot of political interference. And more than anything, Soraya, that simple thing that man has, greed, absolute greed. But I say, when is the greed enough? How many houses do you want? We all like to have a house. We like to have a little holiday place. How many cars do you want? You know, I'm very happy with one vehicle that'll get me from A to B. I don't want 50 cars. Can I drive them? No. How many pieces of land do you want? You can't even look after it. How much is enough when it comes to greed? How much? So I can go on, Soraya, sorry. I think I have to stop now. I see Fazana in her chair. So guys, when you vote, please vote for somebody who cares about the environment, who cares about your future, and who cares about a better tomorrow for you, whichever party. And stop with the party politics, really. You know, pick the candidate who is going to make a difference.
And then also, let's remember Gandhi, who said, there's everything for everybody else, everyone's need, but not enough for one man's greed. And that's exactly what he said. We have a greedy political structure.
Yeah,
thank you, Carol.
That's unfortunately. So on that, Fazana is a behavior specialist. Maybe she needs to work with me. I'm so passionate and energized by this subject. So Fazi, how do we treat our politicians and jumping from party to party like monkeys, right? Jumping from branch to branch. How is that stopped? Because all this is done ignoring the voters' needs. Fazana?
Thank you, Carol. So I would like to start by saying that we pay the politicians, so we have no reason to give them a life of luxury, the luxury that you were mentioning about how many cars, how many lands do they need. I mean, it is you, the people, who pay for the politicians' salaries, who pay through your taxes and through your many means, that we vote for them and they need to serve us. It's not the other way around. So what we see all along is we continue to serve them, continue to bending towards them, and they continue to plunder. And like Carol said, they keep hopping from one party to the other, whoever is more powerful, where they can plunder more, because if they're not in power, they cannot plunder. So I want to just share one example of a fabulous Scandinavian country today in my talk, so that we someday, I don't know even if it's me or my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, will live in a Sri Lanka like that. Because odd as it may sound to many people elsewhere, Sweden does not offer luxury privileges to politicians. There's no official cars, private drivers, you know, they just go in the same crowded bus, just like the citizens they represent. Don't you think it's beautiful? I mean, we vote for them. They are part of us. They're part of our fabric, and they are voted to serve us in whatever way they can. I mean, Carol, you, me, Selvi, all of us do charity the way we can. We serve in several social organizations, Kamani with Shanti Margam, all of us. We are there to serve in a voluntary capacity in many organizations. And politicians also come to power in a volunteer way, in other words, to serve for a better country. But how contradicting is that to the reality? I cannot think of anyone who's done that sincerely to serve the people in that country. So, I mean, if you look at in Sweden again, politicians who dare to spend public money on taxi journeys instead of riding the train end up on news headlines. Even the Speaker of Parliament received a card to use the public transport. Only the Prime Minister has the right to use a car from the security forces on a permanent basis. Swedish parliamentarians live in tiny apartments in the capital where they wash and iron their own clothes and use communal laundries. This may seem meager for such eminent people, but it is actually much better than it used to be, because up until the end of the 1980s, all the parliamentarians slept on sofa beds in their own offices. No one in public life earns an obscene multi-digit salary. Now, in Sri Lanka too, on paper, we know that sometimes a politician's salary is not that obscene, but you know how they make the other money to cover that. So it is not that they are working genuinely to serve a community. The take-home pay of a member of parliament is about 2 times more than of an elementary school teacher. Now you can imagine, if you compare that of an elementary school teacher in Sri Lanka to a parliamentarian's income, I think it's, at least even on paper, it's much more. Maybe it's about 3 or 4 times more. You know, there was once the famous Toblerone case. I don't know how many of you know, where a politician in Sweden had used the government credit card to buy a Toblerone, and she lost her job, and the scandal went down as the Toblerone case. So in a little over 100 years, Sweden has transformed itself from an impoverished agricultural society into one of the wealthiest, most socially just, and least corrupt countries in the world, where nobody is above anybody else. The Swedish experience demonstrates perhaps more than any other how change is possible. So this is our vision. As Soraya started by saying, over 70 years of independence, I think we have honestly gone backwards. So this is a vision I would like to leave behind for the next 100 years. If we can have politicians who are there to serve. I mean, we have 225 in the parliament. And I don't know if there is one genuine person who's there only to serve the community, only to travel in public transport, be one of us, work with us, be part of our fabric, understand our pains, listen to us, and then serve the best they could. Thank you, Karen.
You know, Fazana, we don't need 225 out there. That's been shown in the last few months. We just need about 25 to 50 out there who will do their job. You know, having 225, all there is nepotism. All their families are employed in various ways, shape or form in government departments as their private secretaries, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, literally, these are incapable people. They don't even know. Some of them are barely qualified. The ministers are barely qualified, you know, even with an O-level. So, you know, this, I always say, these guys are telling us how to live our lives. What's wrong with this big picture? You know, so do we blame them for taking every opportunity to, you know, fill the coffers and do everything wrong because they don't have any moral compass? Or do we blame ourselves, the voter, either for not voting or for spoiling our vote or voting purely on party lines because that's what your grandfather and great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather did? Or are we going to change now, start from now, change and say, listen, we are going to make a difference now. You know, we really need to do this, guys. For a better future for our youth, we need to do this. Kaira. So Kaira, as you know, is a mindfulness and meditation teacher. and she was a bhikkhuni for 15 years. Kaira is like the calming force behind this panel of fiery females. Kaira, so Kaira is going to talk about civic responsibility. Kaira, over to you.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you all of you for your really amazing sharings this evening. Well, I have many things I'd like to respond to what you've said. I'm really interested in drawing on the wonderful, beautiful history of Buddhism, that this country is such a refuge in terms of providing this historical link to Buddhism and how that relates to democracy. So to what you were saying, Soraya, and I just want to say with the number of us in green, I hope you all know that this is completely unplanned. There's no meaning behind our matching colors. But Soraya's statements about religious tolerance and the beauty of this monk in her childhood who blessed her when she offered him food, this Buddhist monk, and how that's getting lost today. I just wanted to recall the Emperor Ashoka in India and the edicts that he, the pillars with inscriptions that were all around the country. And they spoke of religious tolerance. They spoke of honoring all the different religions that were in the country. And that is the heritage we have as Buddhists. And I am a Buddhist. So this is something that is our task to keep going in our practice, in our spiritual and religious practice, is how do we honor and make a safe space for people who have a different practice than we do. And this comes from our spiritual lineage, our ancestors, the king whose children brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka. So there's also a long-standing tradition in the Buddhist monastic community of democratic decision-making. So Ajahn Brahm, a monk in the Thai forest tradition, who's Australian, he's English, living in Australia, he says, the longest sustaining democracy in the world is the Buddhist Sangha. So in a Buddhist monastic community, when you make a decision, everyone needs to be there, and it is a decision by consensus. So it's not a vote of the majority over the minority. Everyone has to agree, and it's called the Sangha Karman. And you're given 3 chances to speak out and say you disagree with the proposal. And if anyone disagrees, it doesn't matter what ranking they have to be bhikkhus or bhikshunis. So this is a meeting of the Bhikshu Bhikshuni Council. But it doesn't matter your rank. If you're just the youngest bhikkhu or bhikkhuni and you say, I'm not in agreement with this, the whole thing has to stop and it has to be resolved until there is consensus. And that's the only way the decision can go forward. So this is a powerful example, and it's powerful because it treats everyone as an equal and valuable member of the community. So this is the Dalai Lama who speaks about this very powerful heritage that Buddhism offers, that the institution the Buddha established was the Sangha or monastic community, which functioned on largely democratic lines. Within its fraternity, sorority, individuals were equal, whatever their social caste, whatever their social class or caste origin. So all of that was neutralized when you entered the community. So you could have been in the, untouchable caste, as it was called in those days, or you could have been a king. And if you were monastics together, or a queen, you would have equal standing and equal voice. So thus the Sangha served as a model for social equality, sharing of resources, and democratic process. So, they're rooted, Buddhism and democracy are rooted in a common understanding of the equality and potential of every individual. And Buddhadasa Kirti Singha says that the spread of Buddhism led to the spread of democratic values throughout Asia. So I think as a Buddhist country, as a majority Buddhist country, Sri Lanka can be very proud of this tradition that has really valued hearing everyone's voice and valuing everyone's voice. So it means you have to speak up. You know, democracy takes work. Sometimes we think, you know, I'll just put in my vote and then the politicians will do the work, you know, but that's actually not how the best democracies work. The best democracies work when people are engaged and informed and stay present to everything. There's all this pre-political strata of society, which is our families, our schools, our communities, our workplaces. Those are the places where we each have influence, where we do our pre-political work in terms of establishing what kind of culture we want, what kind of lives we want to live, what kind of, you know, values we want our children to grow up with. So I was reading this book last year by Parker Palmer. It's called Healing the Heart of Democracy, The Courage to Create a Politics Worthy of the Human Spirit. And I just want to share, this is on the back. In this book, Parker Palmer is a wonderful educator and author. He does a lot of educating of teachers. But in this book, he talks about 5 habits of the heart that can be developed in our everyday lives, in our families, our neighborhoods, our religious communities, our classrooms, that help to restore a government, this is coming from the United States Constitution, of the people, by the people, for the people, right? Each of us can cultivate these 5 habits of the heart. And I'll put them in the chat too, so you can read them. But they are, 1, an understanding that we are all in this together. So again, Soraya's emphasis on unity. 2, an appreciation of the value of otherness. So we don't win by trying to eliminate our opponents. That's actually not what creates the most wholesome and vibrant society. So Thich Nhat Hanh, my teacher, says, you know, if you take a pen, if you're on the right and this is the left, you don't wish to destroy the left. You don't want to just get rid of the left, because what happens if you cut off the left? Then this becomes the left, right? You can't exist as the right without the left. So the right and the left inter-are. So if we wish for the disappearance of our opponents, we're wishing for our own disappearance. So there's something about appreciating the value of otherness as it gives vitality to our diverse and democratic society. 3, an ability to hold the tension in life-giving ways, right? So in this book, he tells the story of John Woolman, a Quaker who in the 1780s just was torn apart. His heart was broken by seeing his fellow Quakers. Quakers are a kind of pacifist Christian sect within Protestant Christianity. He was heartbroken to see these people that professed the love of peace were owning slaves, which went completely against the very pacifist equality, or, you know, honoring the equality of every human being. So he started to speak about this among his Quaker community, saying this just can't go on. This isn't how we are, you know, how we're professing to live as Quakers. And, you know, there were some, obviously the people who owned slaves and who were making money off of enslaved Africans found it hard to accept his view, but they didn't throw him out of the community, and he didn't throw them out of his heart. For 20 years, he walked around, he would visit people. If he would have a meal in their homes, he would not eat if it was made by slave labor. If he wore only white, because any darker color clothing was dyed by slave labor. So he refused to benefit in any way from the labor of slaves. And if he realized he had gotten anything through their labor, he would go and pay them without making it a big deal, without it being a public thing. He would go and pay those people. So for 20 years, there was this painful tension in the Quaker community. They talked about it, they argued about it, they make their decisions by consensus, just like the Buddhist monastics, until they could come to this place where 20 years later, They decided as a community to abolish slavery in their own group. This was 80 years before the United States as a country abolished slavery. So I'm telling this story because it's a beautiful story of how a community could hold tension and disagreement and not break apart, but break together. No? So we need to be able to hold tension in life-giving ways. So fourth is in this list, back to the list of Parker Palmer, fourth is a sense of personal voice and agency. We each have something to contribute. We need to believe in that. Fifth is a capacity to create community, to see this as valuable. We need each other, to reach across the boundaries and come together. So I know I've gone over my time, but thank you for the chance to share.
I know, I think I also added to the mix today. So we've gone a bit over time, but Kaira, fantastic words. I wish people would take it to heart. It's so important to calm yourself down and listen to some of that, that wise men before us spoke to the truth. So all I can say is I'm going to hand it over to Soraya for the last sum up, because we are running a little bit over time, Soraya.
Yeah, I'll be very quick, but I think Sylvie has a very important question, I think.
Yes, thank you so much, Soraya. I just want to make a note of this national list, and that the national list members should not be the ones that have been defeated in the elections. This has been a practice in the past, and we must advise people not to let that happen. Because when a vote is given and when they have been rejected as representatives of the people, they should not come into parliament through the back door, through the national list. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvie. Yes, that's a very important point. Soraya?
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. And Kaira, thank you for restoring my hope once again in my Buddhist roots and what this country can possibly do. We have over 70% of the people who are Buddhists, who are taught the Dharma on a daily basis, on weekdays, on weekends, on poya days. So that is my hope. And also we minorities join them. So I think we are not going to have an easy ride, a lot of mountains to climb. Because above all, I think there is so much concealed secrecy by our rulers of their transactions. So our liberties can never be secured. And this is why we are here today talking about being informed and voting wisely. And remember, folks, the worst place to be is in your comfort zone. Nothing happens there. And the political process does not begin or end on election day. So be that person, that change, and empower our youth to stay connected. So we question our politicians, we check with them, we ask them, we see if our vision matches theirs, and we support and vote the right candidate who's right for our nation, who's right for our future, and who's right for the unity of this country. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Soraya, and thank you guys. All of you added so much to this mix. We have to ask for transparency. We have to ask for honesty. We have to ask for moral compass. We have to ask that they protect and save this land for the future generations, and all of its resources have to be protected for future generations. On that note, vote wisely, guys. Please, we need a better tomorrow. We need to believe that we can make change. So go out there, do the work, and during this time of COVID, take all the safety precautions, but do not stay home and let your vote go. Good night. Join us next forum is on the 12th of August. So join us for more scintillating discussions, thought-provoking discussions. Good night. God bless. Stay safe, everybody. And from the panel, bye.